Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Rich, and I'm the founder and CEO of Just Right Reader. And I have to tell you, I am living what I like to say my best life. I get to travel around the country and host symposiums for educators and flying in amazing people like Lucy Hart Paulson and have you all here to share all of your best practices. And then I get to then give you books on the other side to help kids love reading. There's nothing better than that. So today we are doing something absolutely beautiful and amazing. Something amazing is happening in New York right now that they just have decided to fund the Science of Reading, right? Yeah, I know. Your governor has said that science of reading matters and kids actually leaving our schools reading she's going to fund it. She's going to put money behind it and she's going to create legislation. So we feel just so lucky and so blessed that we get to bring Lucy Hart Paulson today while it's on everyone's minds of like, what am I going to do? What does that look like? And how do we make it happen? We're really lucky to have Lucy here. And I want to introduce to you Carolyn Quintana. She's going to introduce Lucy, and we are incredibly lucky to work in partnership with New York City around everything they're doing around the science of reading. Carolyn is the Deputy Chancellor of Teaching and Learning for New York City Public Schools. You know what? I'm just going to tell you who she is for me. I could read this, but I can't even see anything. So I'm going to tell you from my heart who she is. Every time I am with Carolyn, I feel an urgency, a momentum, a passion for teaching, a passion for learning. And she acts always in the interest of kids. And when I talk to her, I hear an interest for teachers and for multilingualism and for focusing on what will get us there sooner and quicker. So it is my amazing pleasure to bring up the Deputy Chancellor of Teaching and Learning for New York City, Carolyn Quintana.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Wait, I want a hug. I'm really excited to be here. One, because I get to introduce somebody incredibly amazing. But the other reason is you're in New York City. And yes, we have New York state legislation that's in motion right now. I hope, we're talking about it and it'll happen soon. New York City has made some tremendous strides, and I'm excited to share it here. Doesn't hurt that I'm hanging out with people that I really love, with Just Right Reader and Sarah Rich. Thank you for being in New York City. So we have almost 1 million students here, 45 districts. 32 of those are community school districts, so elementary, middle school districts. We have about 1,800 schools, over 75,000 teachers. So we're, a little bit of a big district there, right? And in a system this large, when we were determined to improve, I brought notes, so I'm going to follow my notes. How to? Oh, I do. Look at that. See, we're so tech savvy. Thank you. That's me, in case. That's me again. There we go. This is our citywide instructional priority. So in a system this large, right, we were determined that we needed to improve how we taught reading, and we needed to move from cueing to learning about sounds and symbols and how the brain learns to read and build knowledge. And so we wanted to make sure that our community understood why we would be making the shifts and methods grounded in the science of reading. And then we needed them to make meaning. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to make big change in systems. One of the biggest pieces is the people have to understand what it is that you're asking them to change in the first place. And it takes time to make that meaning. But when you do it, it increases their willingness and their capacity to adapt. So not surprisingly, one of the first steps that we took was actually partnering with Lexia to bring in LETRS training. So particularly very, very, very excited. Just in a moment, I'll be introducing Lucy Hart Paulson, but that language essentials for teachers, reading and spelling, that training actually helped our leaders understand what it is that they would be doing across the grade bands. And we knew that we needed them to be familiar and understand the strategies they would have to adopt. So it's, also happy to be here with Just Right Reader, and I'll get to these slides in just a second. Because part of what, and I was just talking at the table with, the package that you're about to pick and the groups of students that you've selected and how you're going to build data out of that and make some decisions from those proof points. What's really great about Just Right Reader is that they personalize. And we know that when students make changes and grow and develop and thrive, it's when they feel like they belong, when they can access, when with effort, their confidence and competence can grow. They develop those academic mindsets. Just Right Reader helps you do that because they're tailoring the text to the child, offering, in fact, not only to meet our data, but when we met last with them, they offered to meet our language requirements. That's a bonus, right? When you've got an organization who's willing to work with you like that. So I'm really, really happy to be here where we can talk about great aids for teachers. We can talk about building as a community. But I want to talk to you a little bit about the work that we're doing in New York City. And I'll be really quick because there's so much going on. So this is our citywide instructional priority. Every child has to have a high quality academic experience that leads to deeper learning. Note in there that it doesn't say NYC Reads is the citywide priority. NYC Reads is the big launch that we've done about literacy. You can't get to this deeper learning piece when every child doesn't have that foundation. And so really important for us that first lever is about mastery of core academic skills and content expertise. And that's for the kids as much as it is for the teacher. That teacher really needs to understand how to reach each child. So under NYC Reads, it's about what does it mean to actually break down reading in a way that a child can acquire it and become stronger and stronger at it as the time progresses, so that they're building knowledge and schema and higher order thinking along the way as well, right? That it isn't just about decoding, although that's a huge part, right? And it isn't just about phonics, but that we move into all those pieces as well. And a teacher has to understand that if they don't have that content expertise, they can't swoop in to provide those just-in-time supports. They don't know what resources are actually the best resources to use. They don't know how to apply the tools that right now we really need and have to keep up with. So in our case, AI is a big part of what's happening in education. It's not enough to just say, bring me, give me, add on something. I have to have that content expertise to know even how to use those things appropriately. We also want to make sure, though, at the same time, and I know that we did them as 1, 2, and 3, but they're not in any particular kind of order. This has to happen at the same time. Our kids' brains are amazing. They can do all kinds of things. And if you don't believe me, find a little toddler and then find a high schooler, put a problem in front of them, and they're both capable of solving, even if they can't read. So we want to make sure that we're providing them with that foundation because they need to be able to read, but we're also making sure that we're still pushing critical thinking and problem solving skills. The problem historically has been we often wait to do the foundational, and then again the foundational, and then again the foundational, and we've been doing it wrong for a long time, right? And so thank you for continuing the research and not giving up, because if you'd given up, we'd still be doing it wrong. And the foundational, and we never push to the other piece, and we do a disservice to the children who don't have that. We do a great disservice. It's not that our kids, particularly who are Black and brown, who live in our communities often that are living at poverty level, are not as smart or capable or problem solving capable as others. It's that we haven't provided them with the opportunities to do both. And so both of those things have to happen. But note that they have to happen in an environment that supports them well. And the last piece is belonging and inclusivity, which is why it's also fantastic to be here where we're talking about belonging, right? So we knew we needed the right resources, we needed the right tools, the technologies. We're investing heavily in building teacher capacity. That has to happen. If we don't take care of our teachers, if we don't make sure we know that they know and can, then they'll stumble along the way. They'll make their own path. They'll decide what to pull from the curriculum. They'll bring in other resources again, and we'll be in the same place that we are. We need our teachers to feel confident about what they're doing. They too need that sense of self-efficacy so they can move forward. So really focusing on that. We've done that through a combination of external partnership for coaching and building internally, interventionists, implementation specialists, folks across the districts who can help us. I mentioned how big we are, right? And so we can't actually have a coach for every school. And so we have through the districts support for our schools so that we can actually provide that kind of context specific, the elbow to elbow or shoulder to shoulder kind of thing, where I'm watching you practice, I can give you the feedback, and then we can continue to grow. Screeners. How many of you utilize screeners or some form of Yes, good. Okay, great. Screeners are a big deal for us. And it's not that they're not, we have all kinds of assessments when we're in school. But we want to make sure that those screeners are being used to determine what's the right skill my child needs to practice, right? And that helps us decide those decodables that are in front of them. What's the right skill that I need to make sure that they're practicing during intervention blocks, whether that's in the general class or in an intervention period. And then if they're not making adequate progress, I can now decide that either I need to administer a secondary screener, or I need to make sure that I'm providing them with those intensive intervention supports before I'm actually getting them evaluated. And so I'm providing these kinds of opportunities to intervene with kids earlier. We have found already we had such tremendous growth in just 3 months of intervention. We had kids who were at risk for dyslexia, who made in 3 months such growth that they were already at a level 1. At a level 1 means that they acquired all of these foundational skills that they didn't have before. And that was just through intervention. Imagine intervention plus the curriculum, plus the right tools, plus a change in the way that we approach reading. All of that together is going to help us have this healthy development. All right. So I'm actually going to skip. We're making sure this curriculum is being implemented. New York City selected its own curricula. I'm not advertising for them. You select the curricula that makes sense for you. But the reason it's important for us is all of our professional learning gets aligned to that. And why? Because then it means we're aligned to the science of reading. That's important for us. And through a curriculum, you actually learn pedagogical practices, how to set up your classroom. You actually create culture across a system because now we have the same language that we use. There are certain strategies. I've had schools already in this short amount of time, we started in September, right, who are already using the language of their ELA curriculum across all of the content areas. In elementary school, that makes sense, right, because I'm the teacher of all the content areas. In middle school, that's a little bit more challenging, but they're doing it anyway because it creates that culture that they want. Then for us, really important, we actually decided, and you can access these online. At the end, you'll have my email if you want to access it, or I don't know if Sarah can provide you with the information as well. But we have shifts for K through 2 literacy, for our upper grades, and then also for math. And the shifts are what we used to do, right? The sort of non-systemic teaching, leveled groups, assessing reading with running records, all those things that you're familiar with, and moving into systematic, explicit teaching of phonics, moving into small group differentiated instruction based on need, decodable texts, right? All of these moves. And they're different for literacy than they are for teaching reading rather than they are for the other shifts that we want to make. But they're all grounded in the science of reading and in the science of learning and development, which leads us here. And so if we're supporting those instructional shifts, we know we're leading to deeper learning. Deeper learning is where we want kids to be. Our chancellor always talks about bright starts and bold futures. Deeper learning leads us to those bold futures. We absolutely need all those wonderful programs that happen in high school that give kids a dip into different career paths, but mostly we need them to be problem solvers, creative thinkers, and deeper learning allows that. When we move from strong foundation and shifts, we can do the deeper learning. But again, and when we draw this out, and I scribble a lot, we often do this in sort of an arc so that underneath we can always connect to the other pieces because we don't want to get stuck in just one or the other. Okay, so back to here. The goal isn't the curriculum for us. And the goal actually isn't even the science of reading for us. The science of reading is the foundation, and we absolutely need it. And every single one of our teachers and leaders should understand it. But the goal is that high quality academic experience. And so we need to support people through the shifts to get there. That's incredibly important for us. If we focus on just the curriculum, then we get stuck. And it's an initiative, and it's only something that's happening during this administration. And we know in New York City anyway how that works. Every 4 to 8 years, you're just going to switch, and folks will wait it out. And this is not about waiting it out. I was talking actually just a moment to Lucy Hart Paulson. I was talking to her earlier, rather. We were talking about how this is not a pendulum, is what you said. We shouldn't just be swinging from what we were doing to what this is now. We need to stay here, right? We're not swinging back. This is the way to teach in order for students to become strong readers, writers, listeners, speakers. And so that should not be the end goal. I want to just stop there because I don't want to keep talking. I could forever and ever and ever. The one thing I did want to share is why this is incredibly important. So I myself was an English language learner. I learned through sounds, right? I learned to read as I was biliterate as a kid. Mostly, though, I was a teacher. I was an English teacher in the Bronx, 9th grade, ELA. And then I was a literacy coach, and I was trained under TC, right? So I was trained as a literacy coach. And then had an opportunity to support my colleagues and to support kids. And I remember kids like Aaron, super bright. He was a problem solver, charismatic, led my groups sometimes, had great ideas. And if I had not provided him with opportunities to pursue passion, to work in group and have leadership opportunities, I would have seen him act out like he did beyond 9th grade. I would have seen him become angry like he did beyond 9th grade. And I understand now that I probably failed him by not recognizing that he had a need to learn to read. Aaron could not read. And that's a problem. I didn't know that then. I know that now. Right. And so for the Aarons of the world, we have to change what we are doing. We have to, because I can just imagine what Aaron would have been capable of if each of us had recognized that he just needed that push. He just needed to understand how to access text on his own so that every other gift that he came with would be able to be amplified. And so it's really important for me that we make sure we're making these changes, that we do actually stand on the shoulders of the folks who've come before us, who've done the research and have stuck through this and have really paved the way for us, and that we use the right resources in front of us to reach every single child, because we can't have errands across every single one of our districts that we don't reach. Every time I'm on social media and a new student reaches me or something, I'm always looking out for Aaron to see if maybe I can reach him again some way, but it's not going to happen. And that's not the dream, right? The dream is that we're going to make sure we meet every child, because as Lucy told me earlier this morning, now I know. And so now that I know, I don't have an excuse and I can't not meet the needs of every child. And so I want to make sure that we're doing what we can in New York City, and we're happy to help other cities do the same. If you're doing things, we've learned actually from the cities that made the changes before us. And so please share with us as well. Now I'm going to actually move over to who you're really here for, though. I would keep talking. You know I would. I can't help it. So I want to, I'll look forward to sharing updates and make sure that I share other information with you. If you ever come back next year, we'll tell you where we are and how much progress we've made, because we will have collected data at that point. So that would be really exciting. But for now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to a woman who obviously needs no introduction, Dr. Lucy Hart Paulson. She's an author and a literacy specialist. She has been on a mission, right? She's also a speech language pathologist. And so she's got that experience of working with educators and children and families in a range of settings. What I think is really important is that there's a combination of literacy, language, and then also development and disorders, right? And so we're thinking about all of the ways that the brain and a child socio-emotionally functions so that they either acquire or don't the skills to read and to move forward as strong literate beings. And so I'm really, really excited about what you bring to the table. I continue to learn every day from you, your team. I appreciate the partnership. I know that you're a super duper author, so I don't need to list all of those things. You can look her up. But please join me in welcoming Dr. Lucy Hart Paulson.
Wow. Thank you so much. I have my own, so you can hold this. Thank you so much. That was so inspirational. And I'm completely humbled to be in the presence of all of you who get to make an important difference for the teachers who are in your care. Let's see where the feedback is coming from a little bit. Is this better to stand back here? If I move around a little bit, we'll see how this works. So the teachers who are in your care, who then get to interact with the children who are in their care. And my main mission is I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference with people who make a difference so that we can make a difference for the children. Because all of us, how many of you have an Aaron in your experience? I have a Matthew in my experience. And when he was little, he was one of those kids who had every risk factor known in our science. except for learning English as another language. He was a monolingual little friend. But because of the supports that we were able to provide for him, he graduated from college. He was dyslexic, severely dyslexic, but because we were able to provide those foundations for him, we paved that road to reading and writing for him that made an incredible difference. And he graduated from college. Yeah. Instead of what we know, where maybe Aaron is not able to contact you because he may be in some other institution because life didn't go so well for him. And that is what we don't want. And so I'm so excited that we are in this movement of the science of reading. But what I also want to say is it's not just about reading. The science of reading encapsulates the science of writing. Reading and writing need to go together. And it encapsulates the science of language. I was so glad to hear you talk about how important language is. It is the foundation for our learning. And the language experiences that we have and the opportunities that we have as educators to provide that rich language foundation in our classrooms, we can help our families understand what that rich language foundation can be as children are engaging with their families and within their communities as well. But we have them in our school setting, and that's what we have the biggest impact of. So science of reading, science of writing, science of language. Along with that is the science of learning. How do children learn? What are those best environments? What are the things, the pillars of learning for all of us? For little kids, for all of us. And then also it's the science of instruction. What are those things that are going to make the strategies and the routines that we provide that are going to make that really important difference? And so what I would like to share with you today is one component in this recipe that we have with all of these things that we put together that we end up, we hope, with really competent reading and writing students who have acquired those skills that are going to help them be successful. And one of them is decodable books. It is one of those elements, particularly in those first years, preschool into pre-K, into kinder, into first, second, third grade, that are going to be a really critical ingredient in helping children build the skills that they need so that they can become competent readers, which will then help also facilitate their writing, which is going to be that entire package of literacy learning. So what does the science say? So you got to know a little bit about who I am. As a speech and language pathologist, I spent almost 2 decades in settings that you get to interact with and working with a lot of little kids, a lot of kids who were going to struggle with that literacy learning process and did. I also got to spend about 20 years working in higher education, where I got to continue my intervention practices and worked with a lot of students across the age bands who were struggling to read. But I also got to teach in the areas of language and literacy development and challenges. When it doesn't go so well, what is it that we need to do? And that was also a big part of what my own research agenda included. And so I spent about 2 decades in higher ed. And now I live in Redmond, Oregon. Let's see, there it is, Redmond, Oregon, in the central part. It's beautiful. This is a sunset from my porch. It's beautiful. And my newest job is I'm a grandma. And I have 3 little experiments, I like to call them, because I get to try stuff. I have 2 little boys who are 3, and they are just dynamos. They're dynamos, and together they're even more explosive. And I have a 6-year-old granddaughter, and she is in the throes of that learning how to read and how to write. And it is just remarkable watching how that process unfolds and develops. And it doesn't happen on its own. It happens with a lot of guidance. It happens with really good teachers. Yes. Okay. So here's what I'd like to cover. We're going to do this in a pretty quick kind of way, because what I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to is, what do you know about this component, this big ingredient that we're talking about, decodable books? I want to share with you why they are important. And when you talk about building your teachers' capacity for their understanding, The why is what is so important to include. Why is it that we do and use decodable books? Why is it that phonemic awareness is such an important foundation in learning the alphabetic code that is part of our written language? Why is it that semantics or vocabulary, all of these aspects and elements that fill in these ingredients, the why is so important? So then I want to talk about some characteristics of what makes a good decodable book. What is the contrast between a decodable book and a leveled book? Because how many of you have leveled book libraries in your programs? Right? How many of you had decodable books in your programs? As many? Okay. And then when do you use decodable books? When should you use your leveled books? It's a resource. Doesn't mean throw them away, but there's a really important message of why and when. Okay, so at your place, there is a little piece of paper here, and it's just kind of a note catcher for you. And what I'd like to, your understanding, what I'd like to know is from your perspective, what are decodable books and what are leveled books? And then what's the purpose of each? And then a thought of what are the types of books that you have in your school that have been used, or maybe that you're hoping to be able to use. So think about that. And I also want to have a special shout out to all of those who are joining us virtually. Hello, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for what it is that you do. Should have mentioned that earlier, but I'm glad I got to it. So welcome. And you should have access to, was that sent to them? Okay, sending it now? Great. So look in your electronic equipment that you have, probably an email, and you should see that. Okay. Thinking about the definitions of decodable books, of leveled books, and what are the purposes. And then just a reflection on what's being used. So we'll frame that. And then what I would also like to just express is, so this week has been a really big week, and what incredible timing. So the article that was in the New York Times on what to know about the science of reading, and we know the science of reading also encapsulates what other kinds of sciences, science of writing and language and instruction and learning. Yeah, what are those pillars of, what is the context that helps us learn the things that we want to know? Yeah, how cool that is. And then so many things happening within your city here, within your state. I know we have folks from other states joining us. And there's this really important movement of the science of reading, encapsulating all of those other elements. So let's look at the why part of what decodable books are, why they are such an important ingredient in learning to read. So how many of you are familiar with Dr. Linnea Airey's phases of early word reading and spelling development? Anybody familiar with who she is? She is a huge giant in helping us understand how the processes of children's tuning into what words are and what spelling is. I was at a conference in New York City yesterday, and she was there. It was such an honor to be in her presence, because look at the citations, decades of research, and she has identified these phases of learning to read and write. And you have on your note catcher what these are. So if you're not so familiar with them, you could take a little bit, but this guides when we should use, it has a good answer to when we're going to be using a range of decodable books, and when those decodable books and what the content is of those decodable books are going to fit into children's, into that instructional routine. So we have 4 big pieces: pre-alphabetic, partial alphabetic, full alphabetic, and then consolidated. And here is, so I'm going to talk about what these stages are, but here's why they're important. Because learning to read, learning to spell words leads to this concept of orthographic mapping. This is a term that is being used now to replace the term sight words. Think about a context in a kindergarten, first grade classroom where you have all these flashcards. Look at these flashcards and tell me quickly what this word is. And the focus of sight word, because of the word sight, meant that children were supposed to memorize words. Yeah. How far did that get us? Is that a good strategy?
No.
Is it supported by the science of reading? No, it's not, because we have an alphabet. Do you know what alphabet really means? We have this system of symbols, and those symbols represent sounds. Yeah. And when we teach that sound symbol connection and teach children to focus on the letters, those are called graphemes in words, and then think about what that sound is. And what orthographic mapping is orthographic means you see things and you see stuff. Put your left hand in the back of your head. That's your orthographic processor. You look at words, you recognize and see what those symbols are, and then immediately that recognition triggers the phonologic pronunciation of those graphemes. You're mapping the symbol onto the sound. So let's chat about that just a little bit. Oh, I put some things in here. When we look at pre-alphabetic, that's what's going on in pre-K. How many of you have pre-K programs in your schools, in your districts? And then partial alphabetic, where there's a partial understanding of this connection, what sounds are to the symbols that they represent, pre-K to kinder. And then full alphabetic is when, oh yeah, I've mastered this. I know what all these 26 letters are, and I'm learning a lot about what those sound symbols are, the basic sound symbol connections. And then consolidated, where it's there, and you shift from early reading and writing into now reading to learn. There's still a lot of learning that is going to be taking place. But here's orthographic mapping. It's the conventional spelling system. Orthographic means the conventional spelling system of our language. And the mapping part of it is making those letter sound connections to bond to the spelling of that word, to read it and also to write it, to pronounce it, and then have an instant memory. When you are looking at something, you look at any of this written material, the words just jump off of the page to you because you recognize them almost instantly. And what is happening in your brain is your brain is looking at every letter and every word that you are reading, and the pronunciation of that word is almost instantaneous. So it is, here's this word. What is that? It jumped out at you, right? And what is happening, that's the spelling of this thing that is not present today or not visible today. It's present, but it's not visible. And then your mouth automatically heard and pronounced the word sun. So it is the glue of the spelling to the pronunciation. And then you know what the meaning is. That's supposed to be meaning. That's what a PC onto an Apple does. Yes. And the G is down there somewhere. Right. Okay. Is that Spanish? Is that Vietnamese? Yeah. That word is supposed to say meaning. Okay. Okay. So orthographic mapping occurs when you can look at a word, you decode it, figure out what that code is so quickly, and you spell words with that phoneme grapheme connection. So even when you simply look at a word, the spelling of the word, you hear the word the way that it's pronounced. That is what orthographic mapping is. And that is what sight word learning should look like. Sight word, not focusing on the word, what the word looks like as a whole. It is noticing what those sound symbol connections are in that word so that you can read it. That's a big shift from just visual to including the phonetic and pronunciation. Okay, so sight word recognition by visual recognition? No. We're going to look at those words and identify what do you know about that letter I? That happens to be a word. And you can say I. Can you sound that out? K, a, n. So many of the earliest words are decodable when you know that sound symbol connection. Okay. So here are the earliest, here's a quick run view. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly. So at this pre-K, pre-alphabetic, it is incidental visual cues. You have a 3-year-old. How many can think about a 3-year-old? Right? They recognize STOP like this? No. It has to be in, it has to be in a stop sign. It's that visual recognition. We hope that a child who is in first grade can look at this and know what that word is. But in preschool, because they're pre-alphabetic, they haven't learned that sound symbol connection yet. And then you move into alphabetic or partial alphabetic. Now they're learning the alphabetic principles. So they look at this letter M and they know that, oh yeah, I know what that letter is supposed to represent, which speech sound it represents. It spells And that's where early decodable books are going to be valuable. At this stage in pre-K, children are learning the alphabet. And so having books that are associating all of the really important elements of what a letter includes, which is the name, the upper and lowercase letter shape, it's the sound that that letter represents, including an anchor picture or a target picture. So A and apple, B and bus, including what does my mouth do when I want to say the sound for b, b, b? Oh, cool. Feel that. B, b, b. And then also a place to write it. So you're incorporating the reading part, the writing part, the language part. Okay. So this is my granddaughter. One of her favorite things is she's at that partial alphabetic stage. She is trying to figure out how to spell this really important and favorite thing of hers, unicorn. Okay, then we move to full alphabetic, and this is where absolutely decodable books are such an important ingredient because you're teaching about the alphabetic code. You're teaching about how these sounds map to letters, or the letters map to sounds in words and functional language. How about this one? Donuts, right? This little kid learned a little bit about the silent E or that magic E. It jumps over all those consonants to make the O say its long name. There we go. Right? A little bit of learning. Decodable books are so important here. Okay. This is a savvy kid. Right? Sounding out what those words are. Okay, let me think about how many. Okay, and then we move to consolidated, building that really important foundation. Because if you can't read the words, what is that going to do to your comprehension? You're not going to get there. Yeah, such an important. Oh, there's an interesting orthographic. Another formatting piece. Okay. This is the development of orthographic mapping is taking place. And there are, estimated to be between 20,000 and 70,000 words that we can read. So even if we just put it at an average about 50,000 words that we can read, have you learned explicitly all of those words? Or have you learned a lot of those words because of the foundation that you have had? Yeah, and it comes from a lot of practice in reading words that fit into that foundation. So when we think about our kids, like Erin, or my friend Matthew, and the friend that you all know about, they often get stuck at this partial alphabetic phase, where that letter knowledge, that letter sound knowledge, the phonologic piece may not be developing in their learning capacities or the instructional opportunities that they have received. We have a lot of kids who are casualties of the curricula that we've been using. We have to teach kids to decode and to spell words. Okay, and here's the simple view of reading. The speech says, how many of you are familiar with the simple view of reading? A lot of you are. Anybody not familiar with the simple view of reading? Good, nobody's raising their hand, but really quickly, if you have good word recognition, and that's going to happen with good instruction and good practice, and you have good language comprehension, you understand, your language is building for the rich language experiences that you've had. What's 1 times 1? 1. And if you, oh, gee, can't read those words. This is where Aaron was, right? Couldn't read those words. Good, brilliant skills and other gifts that he had. But what's 0 times 1? Can't get there. And orthographic mapping is the key to comprehension. It's so important. Okay, so what are good decodable books? I want to just have a contrast. I mean, in order to know what one thing is, you have to compare it with what it's not. And that's also another really important learning piece. Interleaving the things that we want children to be learning. So that means you can make comparisons, how they're the same, how they're different, what's the purpose for one, what's the purpose of another, and when do we want to use them. And so if you were to pick up this book, you would know instantly what the focus of that particular book is. What is it?
Short A.
Right? Short A. And you have these delightful characters. What's going on? Pat, Cat, and oh, I wonder who Max is going to be. And then we have leveled books. So what kind of an animal do you see? And you can imagine what that book looks like. I see a rabbit. The next page, I see a dog. The next page, you don't even have to see the words. You are looking at the picture and you are guessing at what those words are going to be. And that's so which one is going to have richer and more expansive vocabulary? The leveled book is going to have richer and more richer vocabulary. And that was the intent. That was the intent of what leveled books were, to build comprehension. Okay, and then we have this whole series of authentic books. So decodable, let's see if I put those in there. Decodable, leveled, and authentic books. And everybody knows the tale of Peter Rabbit. And that's also an important component of what we want to do in our classrooms is read good literature to our children. Not that they're reading those books, but we are reading that literature to our children. Okay, so what decodable books do is they contain words with a phonetic pattern that young children have learned. This Pat the Cat book is only going to be a decodable book for a little friend if they have learned the sound patterns that that book contains. And that's where I think one of the beauties of what Sarah and your organization have done is you have this data collection of what is going to match up with the children who are in my care. And we're going to match that child's learning to the books that they get to read, the books that are provided. Okay, they're sequenced with simple phonetic patterns. There has to be a few high frequency words, like the word, what are some of those high frequency words that just have to be there to make the sentences complete? The, and, But there's one, if you learn the TH pattern, you recognize it. If you, and completely decodable. There's so many of those, what we have called the dolch words or the fries for, first 100. There are so many of them that either are completely decodable or partially decodable so that you can still get an essence of what that sound structure is. Oops. Okay, so designed to develop habits. This is a big one of looking at the word, figuring it out, and then matching what you have said to the picture. And so the pictures in the story are related to the story, but they're not related to, I see a dog. Where you can guess at what dog is going to look like once you look at the picture and then you match that to the word. Not a good way of teaching reading. You see the word, and then you match that to what the picture looks like. The comprehension is going to be supported by first the words, and then does that make sense? Word accuracy is stressed. Comprehension focuses on much more literal aspects of what rich language is, because the job is not to develop rich language understanding. The job is to teach the code. And they're used with beginning readers, pre-K up to second, third grade, as reading is being designed. Okay, so leveled readers, they contain repeated and predictable text. And because it's predictable, you don't have to read the words. What's the whole point of reading? It includes some high frequency words that are read using meaning cues, picture cues, and at the last resort, and that's the 3 cueing system that if you don't know what a word is, guess. If you don't know what a word, well, if that didn't work, look at the picture, see if you can figure it out. And as a last resort, look at the first letter, see if that's going to help. You know how accurate looking at the picture to guess at what the word is? It's not. It's not. It has a very low accuracy level. And so what we're teaching children to do is to guess. That's not a good way of doing much. Okay, so word reading. Accuracy is not important. The goal is comprehension. I mean, comprehension is the goal of reading. But there is a series of steps to get there. And we cannot bypass that early part of learning how to read. It would be like having a child learn how to talk without saying the speech sounds. Would you ever consider that as an important phase? Okay, so then authentic books, we know, it's building good, rich language. And children are exposed to the complexities of syntax, the sentence structures, the complexity of vocabulary in this really good literature. Okay, see where I'm at here. Okay, so in the purposes, instructional, decodable books give children the practice that they need to feel confident about being writers. Who gets bored with decodable books? Children or teachers? Teachers. Mm-hmm. And that has been, oh, these are so boring. We can't do this. Phonics is really boring. We can't do this. But what do children feel when they are reading decodable books? Wow, I can do this. My granddaughter over Christmas, I had all 3 of my grandkids because they didn't have school. So it was grandma daycare. I was reading to the 3-year-olds. She wanted to take a book and she went with grandpa to practice so that then she could read that book, As Your Mama a Llama, to the 3-year-olds. She was so excited. Okay, phonic patterns with highly frequency, words that children have learned. That's what's a decodable book. We're leveled readers. Children are encouraged to read words, as we talked about, by a lot of strategies, not necessarily reading the words. So here's what the usefulness is going to be. Teaching children to read, use decodable books. Teaching children with your leveled readers, those are going to be a focus on comprehension. Think about a book for a leveled book where you're looking at what those animals are. For a child who's learning English as another language, is that going to be a valuable approach to providing a range of opportunities of what the English language supports for this particular topic? They can be used in that kind of context. And so where do they fit in the simple view of reading? Where do decodable books fit in this simple view? Word recognition, language comprehension. Yeah. And language comprehension is where the leveled books are. But if you don't have this opportunity, you're not going to get to the comprehension piece. Okay, so important lessons that we have. Kids need both strong decoding skills and strong language skills in order to be strong readers. And I'd also add to that, they need to also be exposed to what the spelling patterns are so that they can be good writers as well. So the 2 areas gradually work together so they can become strong decoders to get the information from the text. Strong language comprehension cannot be a substitute for poor decoding. And we know a lot of kids who did okay in 1st grade, 2nd grade, maybe even into 3rd grade, and they hit the wall. That was an Aaron. He survived for a while and people didn't know for a long time that he couldn't read. Decoding and language comprehension should be assessed That's what screeners are important for. And assessment and intervention need to focus on identifying the weak strands and then helping to enhance them. So when should we use them? Decodable books are good for early practice, early reading practice. When you're teaching a particular phonics structure, a pattern of how our deep orthography works. Deep orthography, because English has this layer of Anglo-Saxon. That's the basis of English. And then we have this layer of Latin. And then we have this layer of Greek. And from a decodable perspective, we're teaching the sound patterns. As children are moving into first, second, third grade, we start talking about those morphemes, the inflected endings, the prefixes and suffixes that we add to our words to change the form of the word. And then in the later grades, moving into what is the etymology of some words, because that gives us a clue to how to pronounce that PH in a particular word. Or the CH, why it sometimes says k, why it sometimes says ch, right? Okay, so impacts. Decodability, here's from some of the research. Decodability is the critical characteristic of early reading text, as it increases the likelihood that students will use a decoding strategy, and that results in immediate benefits, particularly in regard to accuracy. You have to read the words accurately to understand them. So students apply phonics skills in connected text, and decodable text positively impacts their early reading progress. And decodable books are a really important ingredient. So simple text is motivating for kids. It's not so motivating for us, but guess what? It's not about us. It's about our kids. And so they enjoy reading them because they see them. Here's what the research says. They see decodable texts as these are really exciting. And I think when I have seen the breadth of what Just Right Reader has, there's a lot of selection for the same skill set. Short A, there's a lot of them so that you can match the interests of where children might be. Dan the Ninja is one that comes to mind. So selecting high quality books, make sure that there's a clear outline and sequence of what those phoneme graphing correspondences are in a series that is matched up to your phonics instruction. Make sure that there is a target grapheme, which is the letter or letter pattern, phoneme, which is the sound, correspondence, and those should have a lot of practice. And then the text is continuous and it includes correct grammar, punctuation, all those important things that are the print concepts, what it looks like, one sentence per page for early readers, and that progresses to more and more texts. When I was showing my granddaughter some of these books, the early ones, the orange ones, where there's one sentence per page, and then she picked out a one that was a little bit higher, and it had a paragraph. She had this visceral response of, whoa, because she knew it was going to be way above what she could do. There's minimal undecodable words. You have to have high frequency words to make sure that they're grammatically correct. And tricky words are discussed ahead of time. Here's what ninja looks like. So when you see this word, you're going to know what that means. And so do not use these strategies. And we've talked about this. Look at the picture. Look at the first letter. Guess what based on the context. Or read to the end of the sentence, determine what word fits. Those are not strategies that are going to be helpful in helping your children succeed. Do use strategies that prompt children to look for what part of this word do you know? And let's see how that can work. So we talked about the why, the what, and the when. And I hope what we have done is provided a deeper understanding and awareness of what decodable books are, why you should be using them, when you should be using them. You have this library of other books that they do have an important purpose for another context, but not for teaching children to read and then facilitating their writing. So, comments, questions? Q&A. with microphones. Feel like Oprah?
All right. Well,
Carolyn's
gonna stick around
You get one.
for 10 minutes because it's so nice to have the people here that are doing it. Carolyn, real quick, what was your big takeaway? Do you mind? Like one of the biggest things that you heard?
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you. I think one of the big takeaways, we have libraries in our classrooms full of leveled readers. We have a whole bunch of those really wonderful, authentic books that we love to read at home and to our kids and things like that. But the big takeaway was that they serve a purpose, just not the purpose of practicing the skills that you need to become a fluent and confident reader. And I think that's really important, right? Is that there are different texts for different purposes, and you can actually repurpose those leveled readers. One of the things that we've started to do is just have around those books, because they're often also topic specific. If we're learning about, rainforests right now, pull out all the books that are about ecosystems, have them around so that with support, right, with teachers, with they can actually access the books and have some conversations around the content inside of them. But for practice, and I loved hearing what you said about, we may think they're boring, right? There's not a whole lot of plot in these books. Some of these actually are kind of exciting. I really did.
We tried. We actually did try. It's very hard, actually.
Some of these are fun. But I have watched my own children and other people's children and across schools, when they sound things out and they get it. I think you actually did it. That look on their faces, like, I just got the word. I did it, right? I read, and I understand that I read. Whereas I've also experienced the frustration of looking at an image with a child, reading through a page and going to the doctor. And it's not a doctor. It's a person in a coat, and it turns out that it's actually dentist. And if you sounded it out, it would be a really different set of sounds.
Starts with the same letter.
Starts with the letter, is wearing the coat, right? And you're, and so then I wonder, did you even know the going to part, or have you read this more than once? But we want to make sure, because that's first grade. Actually, this child was attempting to read this. What happens when they're in many, many grades higher? And so I appreciated just the reminder that there is a purpose for each of the types of texts if we understand, and you started with why. Right? Why, how, and when. And so thank you for breaking it down in such simple terms.
The other thing that I just want to do you have another second, or you have to go?
Yeah, no, I can.
The other thing I thought was so interesting is the sight words. We're all it makes sense when you talked about sight words. It's orthographic mapping, and we can actually sound out all of those words. How often do teachers keep doing that? And I feel like now's our moment to do what we know better, to do what is the right way around that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, thank you. So when I was kind of reflecting on a student that I had, he was able to read fluently, but when it came to writing, there was a gap in his understanding of those sounds. So for a student like that, where do I start, or where would I start?
Teach him. And Jasmine, what you reflect on and is a context of where we have been. There's been such a focus on reading, and think about what's going on in writing in your districts. How many of you have a focus in the early grades of how you hold a pencil? How do you shape the letters, where you start at the top and you come down, you have this rhythm and pattern of how you build the motor memory for shaping letters. I mean, that aspect of writing is with the simple view of reading. We have a simple view of writing as well. And handwriting and spelling are the big components of what leads to composition. And so my bet is that child probably does not. I wonder what about my hypothesis, and what I'm going to be looking for as an evaluator and a diagnostician is, okay, so what does their pencil grip look like? What is their ability to shape the letters? So here's a little strategy. Tell a child to start with the letter A, lowercase letters. Start with the letter A, go all the way to the letter Z, and do it as quickly but legibly as you can, and see what the timing is. And if it takes more than a minute, they don't have good, almost the decoding piece of how you write letters before you can even go into the spelling piece. So if you're thinking about, okay, how do I have to shape this letter? Then you're missing a really important foundation piece. So the writing, that's where I would start. And then in our early instruction, writing and spelling, reading and spelling should be going hand in hand. In pre-K, it's the alphabetic principle. Here's the letter M and it spells Same thing in first grade. The words that children are learning to read are the words that they also should be writing. So reading and writing go together. So having little whiteboards, having opportunities. I think in some of your books you have white.
Just going to show you, right. O for octopus, recommendations to actually go through and circle all of the O's. So if you touch the book, it's actually kind of, you can write on it, dry erase. But then it has, you can finger spell. And then the next page actually lets you write, practice writing. But throughout the book, we've talked about octopus and O. Open, on, not open, on, octopus, right? Things like that. And so there's an opportunity to practice the sound, the letter, what I've already read. And I think that's really important.
That is really important.
Build fluency.
And so writing, what you just illustrated was children, little kids, need to trace, copy, and then write. And that's exactly what you were doing. Trace, copy, and write.
So I just had a quick question in thinking in terms of the teachers and what would be kind of your recommendation on merging the two, because you do need to have the decodable readers and you also need to have the leveled readers and the authentic tests. So if we were to go back to our teachers and say, hey, we really would like for you to start to incorporate more of the decodable readers, I think one of their questions would be how. So what are some of the recommendations that we can take back to our teachers?
We're actually doing that in New York City. And part of that is, does the curriculum actually reflect the science of reading? If it does, then there isn't really the same room for a leveled reader like you would have had with other curricula. And so if whatever curriculum you're using is grounded in that foundation, right, for reading in K through 2, very specifically, even more so a foundational curriculum, then it will ask you to use decodables. Often it comes with decodables, but if not, then you make use of reputable organizations that are creating decodables that reflect your kids, that actually have what you need inside of them. But part of that is in New York City, we didn't want to get rid of every book that we had. And we're also breaking habits, right? We've been doing the same thing for decades. Not even saying for the past 5 years of the last administration, decades. We've been doing the same thing for decades. And teachers who've been teaching for a while, one, felt very confident about what they're doing. And so there's a very socio-emotional component to that, making sure that teachers can feel good about having learned something new and over time getting good at that. But there are some things that we can't do over time. So like leveled readers, we have asked them not to have leveled libraries. That's not an overtime thing. I have said no leveled libraries. If you have leveled readers, they are now in bins that are about content, that are very much about specific areas that we're learning about. Also want to make sure that we're building up our school libraries, because our school libraries are filled with books that kids can choose from, that librarians can help them look at, and that teachers can pull to read that beautiful literature that we all love. Again, the teacher reading, right? Not expecting the student to be able to do it, depending on the text. And then those decodables become very much about, so when you were reading in alignment, when you were teaching in alignment to the science of reading, it feels, again, maybe a little boring at times in the early years,
For us.
explicit, systematic, and about skills. When they're taking these screeners and they're getting intervention, it's very much about skills. And when they're practicing to build fluency, whether it's through decodables or through technology, it's about skills. And so if I'm learning a very specific sound, letter sound, correspondence, right? If I'm learning something that I'm doing, I need to be able to practice it over and over and over again. And so you need the decodables as part of whatever you're working on. That comes with training and providing the resources. That's the other part.
It's delicate.
It's delicate. I have seen some districts
Yeah.
where the administration has said, locking your leveled books up so that they're not available. And so then teachers have this void to fill. Let's try these decodable books. And then what happens over time, it's giving teachers grace. It's a new way for many of them, a new understanding. And that's why the why is so important. Here's why we're using them. So they fill and they realize, wow, look at what my children are doing. Look at the impact that this approach has had on their learning to read and write. Now I get it.
Yeah.
And sometimes they need that catalyst to shift to another way.
It's not just about the decodables in front of you too, though, right? Because we were used to having word walls, and now we're really thinking about sound, right? We were used to having different resources in front of us that may have looked a little different. And so when we're really aligned to the science of reading, how does our room change? How do the resources that we're using change? How do the manipulatives change? And the activities that we're asking kids to do? How does grouping change?
Mm-hmm.
And for us, our kids are spending 990 hours in that class per year. And so what happens in that environment really shapes a child. And so we want to make sure that across the board, that's what's happening. And so training, support, and then celebrating every time you see the right thing. So if you're an administrator or if you're a teacher leader, and you see that folks have made those kinds of shifts, they've labeled their bins differently. They now have sound walls or things like that. Celebrate that. Put it out there. Make it a really big deal, because that's the behavior you want to see and you want to encourage.
My turn. Oh, sorry. So this is a question about the other teacher, the parent. I literally was at a restaurant the other day and heard a grandparent say, "Oh, I heard about this science of reading thing, but I'm still going to teach whole words." And it just struck me at a moment. It was kind of like, should I get up and talk to this lady? But just the idea that how are you combating or addressing making parents knowledgeable of some of those really bad practices and to let those go so that the work that we are doing can resonate with students?
That is such a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. I actually meant to say that to you about the decodables, right? Our parents were used to getting running records and to knowing my child is a level K, and if they work a little bit harder, they can make it to an L or an M. And I know that, and I don't know what in the world that means or what makes it a letter or not a letter, but I know that it's progressive. And if I'm on a K, I need to make it to whatever comes after K, right? Now it's not that way. It's very much about, we are working on this specific set of skills, and your child is either, moving through it or having difficulty, and we're working on this, try this at home. That's hard, because we're not expecting parents to be actual teachers of reading at home, but we do expect them to help support the behaviors. And so it's an information campaign. For a lot of parents, they'll actually say, science of reading, I can't go home and teach my child to read. I actually just need you to speak to them. I need you to make sure that they have access to books they can practice with, where they already know, not something new, what they're already practicing what they were learning today. There are videos, fantastic, the little QR code. Yeah, this little thing. I mean, it's like an advertisement for Just Right Reader. There are little videos on the back of this thing. So if parents aren't really sure what to do, there's a lesson about what it is that we're practicing. And the child should have, so when you get the little Just Right Readers, they're actually tailored to your child and their data. So they should already know whatever it is that they're practicing. So they're just going over it again on their own independently. But it's an information campaign, and we're not there yet. New York City, that's part of what we're really working on. So this past summer, for example, our Family and Community Affairs team actually went out in a van and did summer streets and distributed books and did read alouds and talked to parents in Spanish and in English about what we're doing at every single town hall. We were at one last night. We talk about all of the moves that we're making in terms of NYC Reads, and now we're moving into NYC Solves with math, right? So it's an information campaign, and we keep talking about it, but also because we're New York City and people like to write about us a lot. The New York Post, the New York Times, and all those other folks are kind of helping us out. Every time they write something good or bad, you hear more about it and about how poorly we've served kids for so long. I think that begins to stick with people like, oh, okay, maybe I should be paying attention. Social media is helping us out. And then just the more we can bring in folks like Lucy, we run sessions with parents so that folks, because what you just shared is so incredibly accessible to anybody, not just educators, but it is just, you've broken it down in these very simple components. And so how do you use even the video that will happen from Lucy's talk just now to maybe host a forum with families and teachers where then they can talk about it, right? So like set up opportunities like that to have discussions around what it means, have the books out so they can kind of play with them. But it's an information campaign. We're all new at it, unfortunately. There's some folks who've been doing this for a very long time. And then there's some of us who had to be reminded and come back to this. And so we're new and we're going, we're moving in that direction. I think part of that too is just what's the culture of learning, mistake making, persisting that your community has, and how do parents become part of that process with you?
So the QR code is real, actually. We created it. We were working with Fulton County, and literally the books were like out in our packs. I'll show you our packs in a second. And they were telling me kind of the experience and how they just wanted to involve families. And midstream in our work, we created the QR code and started having people video these phonics lessons so that when you buy our book, on the back is a phonics lesson they're written for the child, with the child in mind, but parents always watch them. What did you learn in school today? Nothing. Right? Like how many times did that happen? So the whole idea behind it was like, when you go home, when you want to keep that learning going, when we want to keep you reading, you'll watch the QR code, and then there's a video phonics lesson in Spanish and English. Fresno Unified is having us add them in Hmong. We're in talks with New York City of all the languages that they need. The whole idea behind it that's happening, that was not actually why we created it, is that parents are now learning to read by sitting beside their child and watching the video. That was not why we did it, but it's this beautiful, like, just incredibly satisfying byproduct that came out of that happening, that we're really proud of. That
gives me goosebumps.
What'd you say?
That gives me goosebumps.
It gives you goosebumps, but also Terry King Hunt is our educator who does all of our videos. She changes her hair in all of the videos. She's a beautiful African-American woman who's super intentional and thoughtful about, when she's doing this video, how can she be creating something that the kids in front of her can see themselves in. So there's a lot of thought and intent also in this video moment that we can kind of create something beautiful for kids and families. Any other questions? Yeah.
So my question is, in our district, we are moving and we've given teachers support in moving towards utilizing the sound spelling wall. But we still see, when we go into classrooms, a high frequency word wall. And we know that our wall space is very limited and it should be very intentional. What are some advice that you can give us into helping the teachers kind of let go of the high frequency word wall?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that sounds like you just walked through one of my schools. And that's going to keep happening, right? Change takes time. And habits, we have to get, but I think that goes back to, and we've done this, right? We've walked with superintendents and coaches and teachers together and just sort of asked, like, do you understand why these things are up there? When you still have these ways, like, these are the tricks you can use to read up there, at the same time that you're asking kids to sound things out, do you understand how those two things don't actually go together? When teachers have made meaning, you'll start to see that go away. So I'll give you an example. It's a school I talk about all the time just because they started a year before the rest. So we launched NYC Reads. We had started some of that work very intentionally before, so that we could roll out some of the curriculum, do some of the training, practice. And so one of our schools in Harlem had started prior. And I like to joke because they did a lot of grumbling. I had to meet with all the parents, and the UFT or union reps were present, and with members of the school. And there was a lot of grumble about, oh, we're going to change this. And what am I supposed to do? And I'm going to throw all these things away. And you're going to ask me to do things differently. And they were an inquiry-based school, so they've always done things a little differently anyway. And at first it was really difficult, and they kept up the old things, the new things. That it was this sort of combination of stuff. I came back multiple times, and every time I'd see a little bit of a shift. And then this year, at the start of the year, they were dragging me from classroom to classroom to show me, look at my bins, look at my classroom, look at the books, look at the things. And it was with that level of excitement. And I asked, they had some new teachers. Principal was not worried. The veteran teachers had now taken the new ones under their wing, and they were good, and we're going to show them, and this is the way we do things. And if you walk in there now, they are a model for a structured literacy site. They are really doing things differently. And it took a year, not just of training, but of making meaning. Do you understand why these things are not working in alignment to one another, right? And so it goes back to what Lucy was saying about, do you know the why? Do you know the how? Do you know the when? And I think sometimes that takes time. Sometimes it takes celebrating the right behaviors so that you keep pointing out what you do want to see. And then unfortunately, sometimes it also takes, you have to go in and say, this cannot be up there. Here is why. This is detrimental for this reason. Here is why. And that's okay, because we're talking about young people. We're talking about children who need to learn to read, and it's not okay for us to not want to hurt someone's feelings to take something down that's taped up.
Mm-hmm. We started these symposiums actually because Ray Reitzel, one of our researchers, told me that 60% of classrooms are still doing balanced literacy. I was on a call with him, and that's what he said to me. And it was this social justice moment for me of like, we can do something better at just like we talk to Lucy all the time. She helps us create our books. Ray Reitzel helps us create our books. Like everyone helps us, right? We're talking to them to create good things. And it was this moment of like, they shouldn't talk to us. We should create moments where we can take her around to all around the country and help you do what the work is so hard. Like those are hard conversations. It's like, and it's upsetting when you walk in, right? It's like, so that was why we created these symposiums coming around to you, so that people who are doing the hard work get to model for you. And you also get to hear from researchers, like exactly what's happening for you is the catalyst of this. All right. We have to let Carolyn go.
Sorry.
Right. Z, I got to let her go. Yeah. I got to let you go.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. I want to walk you through. I know. Isn't it so great? It's kind of beautiful to see that the struggles and the work that you're doing is also like she's moving a massive system around that, right? It's really real. This stuff is real. All right. I want to walk you through. You have in front of you what is our kind of our packet that we like to do so we can show you everything that makes Just Right Reader. So we have taken to heart everything that Lucy has said, or Lucy Hart Paulson. Open it up. I want to walk you through the flagship kind of like, I was a principal for 20 years. We created Just Right Reader because I was a turnaround principal. They would move me from site to site to site to site to site to help turn it. And I got really good at it. I could turn a site in 1.5 years. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And then my own daughter had a hard time learning how to read. It was this wake up call for me of like, what am I going to do? How do I help Izzy? And I went into the book room because this was 4 years ago that we had. And I pulled out all those books and they were just so boring. They were really awful. And I was like, you know what? We can do something better for Izzy. I can do something better for teachers. And I literally, at that moment, I want to tell you, I literally started emailing researchers. They all emailed me back. And I'll tell you why. They wanted to create a better product. They were like, what's out there isn't good. We will help you make something better. And that was the moment and the birth of Just Right Reader. So we started creating decodable books that are just fun. Like the idea that teachers need something fun is real. Our decodable books are fun and they are reflective of the kids in your classroom. So all of the books, if you look at them, if you open this one up. This is our classroom libraries. Go ahead, open it up. Our classroom libraries are fun. We have the most books on the market for decodables, more than anyone else. They start off that the very first page tells you the letter sound you're going to be working on. Lucy, tell me, why is this so important that we tell you the letter sound you're going to be working on? So you know what you're learning. It's good for teachers, it's good for parents, and it's good for kids. Done. That's the very first page. On the very last page, we go through for you some activities that you can do around phonics, the decodable words, and then some of those high frequency words that I should probably rename this to orthological mapping, right? Like instead of high frequency there, I'm ready. We're really sending everything to print again, so we're going to change it. The words are on one side, the picture is in the other. That was intentional. We want this to be so simple when you look at these words that they jump out to you. Remember, we talked about this. And our pictures are just fun and beautiful. And remember, every single one of our books, our take homes and our decodable libraries, comes with that QR code on the back that you scan for a phonics reading lesson in Spanish, in English, in Hmong, and New York City is going to take it on for all of us, right? They're going to do all of the languages for New York. Now, I got to tell you something. The whole vision behind this is they're short. They're 2 to 3 minutes long. They're not very long at all. That's intentional because we know that we have a moment to catch kids and that's it. We have a moment to catch parents. Done. We also started hearing from schools that were like, I'm really worried about my multilingual learners, my emergent bilingual kids, my 2nd to 5th graders that are still emerging. So they asked us to create what we call our high interest chapter decodable books. These are nonfiction. These are mysteries. And these focus on what holds those kids back is multisyllabication and prefixes, suffixes. So that's what these books focus on. And they're bigger. When we started working with all of our researchers, they were like, I want you to create books, Sarah, that fit into kids' hands. So you'll see these are tiny and small with the idea that like kids can hold them. So these books for the older kids are bigger. We want them to feel bigger, feel different in that way. She pulled out my pre-K books. Our pre-K and pre-emergent books are absolutely beautiful. We designed these again with the researchers with the idea in mind that reading, writing connection is so important. So on those last couple pages, there's one guy in the US who likes to do this, and we have him, and he makes us dry erase pages, right? We want them to practice it, that reading, writing connection. All right. So now I want to tell you about the product that we have. Jen, come on up. I want everyone in New York to see you. This is Jennifer Iannozo, and she does for us. She's our New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts rep. All right, great. So the product that we have that no one else has is our take-home decodable packs. Orange is going to send us their reading data. They're going to, oh my gosh, they're so excited. They actually are sending us their reading data. It actually is happening. Orange is sending it. They're sending us their reading data. And what do you guys use? Acadians. So we literally have created an algorithm. We'll take in any type of data you have. Acadians, FastBridge, iReady, whatever it is, we'll push it into our reading algorithm. It will push out for us the 10 decodable books that are exactly at that child's independent level. And hold on, Jen, before you open it, it comes with your name on it. So we were trying so hard to make this special. This should feel like Christmas, your birthday, Hanukkah, whatever that fabulousness is that like makes you feel special. It has your name on it. You open it up. Think about a class of 22. We send her a box. She's got 22 little packs in there. She passes them out to everyone. Everyone opens them at the same time. That teacher who was resistant to doing structured literacy, all of a sudden she has this magical experience with her kids. We send you 10 decodable books that are exactly at that child's independent level so they can read them. We want them to be a little bit easy. We want them to be the slightest bit easy, right, Lucy? So that they have the confidence. And these, when we worked with all of our researchers, they said that reading, writing connection. So when we designed these, you'll see that the very last page of these practices writing within the instructional skill that they're working on, whatever that phonics skill that they're working on is. And then we want kids to be reading these 4 to 6 times. So we created on the back what we call high five reading. Every time you read it, you color it in, high five reading. for 4 to 6 times. And if you watch the video, you also color that in. We feel so lucky. I see you being like, oh my God, that's so smart. We worked with all of these researchers. So our product is like completely designed for like, what actually do kids need? What's happening in the classroom? Remember, we don't even hire salespeople that aren't teachers. Like, we're so crazy that literally everyone who works for the company was at some point a teacher, a principal, a something in schools, because every single part of our product should feel like kids and what they need. We have 11 rounds of these. So tell us what different people around the country are doing, or here within your own region.
Sure. So right now, like Sarah said, the optimal implementation of your take-home decodables would be 11 rounds. What that means, every 2 weeks over the school year, those students will get, based on their data, their own pack every 2 weeks. How are they using them? The teachers also get a very nice packing slip that tells them who in their class got the same books. So how easy, right, to implement. So we are supplement. They're using these as a supplement to their curriculum, and they're using these in their small group instruction, and we're giving them exactly what they need at that moment. Okay. Also,
Oh, no, I was just gonna say Sarah, Jen, and Lucy all got the same books. Heather, Karen, and Antonio got the same books. So she can start them pulling those for those
Right
2
away.
weeks. Right away, we give her lesson plans. She's got lesson plans too.
Yep, there's a lesson plan for each individual book. And other ways they're being used after school. We have actually a district that is using this right away. They're taking their mid-year data. Those students that are still struggling, they're going to be an after school program. They're going to keep them after school 2 days a week. And we're going to supply the books at those students' level. Those teachers are going to use our lesson plans in an after school program. Summer, lots of summer planning is coming up now. So if you're planning for your summer school, you have a 6-week program. Kids can get a pack each week. Teachers usually sometimes are not the same teachers in summer that have taught these children all year. So what a great way to have that target right away when they come in for summer. That's another great way.
I've seen people do this. Usually summer school is like 4 to 5 weeks long.
Mhm.
They want to buy one for each week of summer school. And then what I encourage them to do is send one home. Because what happens is kids get in the routine within their summer classrooms. They know how to use these. So if you send them home, it continues to keep that going after summer school and that extension. So the best implementation for summer that I see is 5 packs, one for each week of summer school, and then one more to go home at the end. And then the one thing you forgot is we created this product, truth be told, for those Title I, those transformation schools, the ones you're worried about. You're like, I got to do something different. This isn't working here, right? Those schools we love. Fulton County put us into their 11 transformation schools that were on the state list. They sent these home every 2 weeks. They bought for every classroom a library. So the teacher had her own. Then every kid was getting these every 2 weeks. They went from 11 transformation schools to 4 transformation schools to this year 3 transformation schools. We love that, right? That's like sometimes there's these moments where you're like, that's it. That's why we created the product. Done. Fabulous. Wonderful. And it works, right? And right now we're doing efficacy studies in Prince George County. We're super excited about Fulton County. We're writing up that work we did with them. We are ESSA level. Can't remember if it's like weird ESSA how it works, but like the point is that doing this with your kids, we know will work, and it gives us joy, it gives you joy, and it gives kids joy, right? You said summer, you said tutoring. A whole bunch of districts are using us, like Pasadena, I know, is buying a library for every tutor, and then 11 rounds for the kids to work with them. Hillsborough did summer. I think you got it. The one thing that I would say to you is that Jen right now has a gift. Do you want to tell them about your gift? Because it's only one more
Surely.
week left.
Yes, get in it while you can. We are offering pilots, which some districts in the room are taking advantage of. So depending on the size of your district, we can offer a number of your students 3 rounds. Rahway too, I just thought of it. Rahway is doing it as well. 3 rounds of take-homes. So what does that mean? We will supply 3 rounds of the take homes based on your students' data. So that would be basically a 6-week pilot. And just let me know if you'd like to participate. Yes.
Literally, there's no cost.
No cost, no
I'll tell you why.
obligation.
So like, if we really are a company, the reason why we created the pilot, we really are a company who believes that if you try our product and if kids do it, it works, right? So the best thing I can do tons of sales pitches, but the best thing I can do for you is you try it, you like it, we get to serve more kids. So it's like this double whammy for us of like, we serve more kids, you get to see it, and everyone wins, actually.
Right. And the kids are also building a home library, right? So at the end of that pilot, they're going to have 30 books at home that are at their level that they can actually view with their families, just like we went through the whole thing. They can use the videos with their families, and it's a great connection. One of the districts we're working with right now is actually going to take the pilot. They're going to build a family engagement night to kick it off. So there's just so many different ways you can use it. So yeah, let me know if you'd like to participate.
The one thing I forgot, Chad, is we just made baby books.
Oh, yes.
So a whole bunch of districts, Montgomery County, Duval County, they were like, Sarah, we can't wait till kids enter school to do all this reading intervention. Can you make us board books? I was like, I guess so. We'll make you board books. So we literally started making board books for the babies. Again, these are so beautiful. Kids can see themselves in our board books, the whole idea behind them. These have a video on the back that walks parents through how to help how to be a new parent. And these have sign language, because for those babies, if they learn sign language, you told me something beautiful. I'll tell my research, but what was the research you were telling me?
The research is very clear that when you teach children, help or expose children to signs when they're babies, it has a positive impact on cognition. It also has a positive impact on language development and verbal expression. So it's one of those facilitators of language that makes a really important difference in young children and babies, infants and toddlers.
That's why we added it in. So the best part also, as the CEO of our company, is I have 3 kids and I have a 2-year-old baby. So like when we were creating this product, I was like, I do signs with her. She loves it. We're going to add these in. Right. And the frustration goes away. All right. So because we are hugely just, our whole vision is to support kids and support educators. Like that's a huge part of us. We were out for dinner with the superintendent from Cincinnati, and she was talking about the implementation she wanted to do with her district, what it was, how to do it. And like, she was just so heartfelt in what she wanted to do. She was like, I want them to know how much I care. I want them to know. And she was just going on and on and on about her emergent bilingual community, what she wanted to do for them. And I was like, you know what, Ironetta, we're going to capture your words, your passion. We're going to make a video for your community so they hear it. So literally we within 2 weeks, Tracy in the back sent out a crew. We started filming her, and here's what it is. Let me show you.
Hello, families of our ELL students. I am Superintendent Ironetta Wright.
And I'm Board President Ben Lindy. We are so excited to share how together we can make this summer a summer of reading.
There is a lot of research about the science of reading, and the best thing you can do as a family is read together.
To help many of our families and students, our team will be visiting neighborhoods this summer to distribute books.
Students will receive a backpack of decodable books by Just Right Reader, and they will be able to practice reading in English and Spanish all summer long. Every time your child reads one of their books, it keeps their phonics skills strong, so they're ready for the year ahead.
These books are fun, colorful, and tell stories that get kids excited to read and then keep reading.
Plus, every book comes with a memorable video that teaches a phonics skill. Just scan the QR code on the back of the book to watch the video in English or Spanish.
Have your child add their name on their Just Right Reader backpack, fill it with their books, and bring the power of reading everywhere they go.
Every bit of reading counts, and we can't wait to hear about your child's favorite books. Be sure to share your reading adventures on social media with the hashtag Cincinnati Readers. Enjoy and happy reading.
So now we have a film department because what Ironetta did was so beautiful. No, seriously, because what happened is she made this video. She sent home the backpacks. She has now, and we made it even better. We created the QR code on the backpacks for your district. So now all year long, if your superintendent wants to change the message, they just go on, they film a new one, and then the message changes for families. When we started doing this, she reposts this video, even though it's from the summer. She's constantly reposting it because families are happy and she gets good phone calls, right? When we did this in Fulton County, he's like, I've never had so many positive phone calls in my whole entire life, Sarah. So Ironetta, she keeps getting these good phone calls from families because we're sending home books, right? That kids can actually read and that parents can help them and support them along the way. It's like, it works. We add into the backpack. Fort Bend in Texas was like, Sarah, you know what you're missing? I was like, what are we missing? I love it when people tell me we're missing. They were like, you're missing the backpack. So that's how we have a backpack. The other thing that started happening is all around the country is people are like, you know what I need now? I love that phrase. I'm like, what? What do you need? Spanish. So by, I think, end of February, March, we're going to have Spanish ready to ship out. And we're just really pumped for that. So stay tuned for Spanish. Coming soon, right, Jen?
Yeah.
And they'll have all the same features of the video and everything. So
full libraries,
and take homes, all of it. Fabulous. Jen, what did we forget?
I think we're good. I wanted to mention Spanish, and I think we're good.
I mean, if you, would you say Haitian Creole? Hey, if you want to do it, Florida wants it. So if I just got to find the right partner. That's what we need. We always need a partner. The other thing to just know is that our books are made in the US. Like we could make them anywhere for cheaper, but we have decided to make them in the US. Again, it's that teacher mentality of how many times did I go down and I was like, did my order from Scholastic come? And they'd be like, no, Sarah, just wait. It'll come. I'll tell you when it gets there, right? How often does that happen for you all? So as a teacher, I was like, if we print in the US and we ship in the US, people get our products sooner. So we're going to do that. So there you go. All right, lunch is here. It's wonderful. If you're online, reach out to Jen to get your take-home pilot, and we're just really excited. So thanks.
Thank you.